Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atlanta Voice. This is your girl Dawn. I'm here with Mrs. Nsé Ufot, who is the CEO of New Georgia Project, and she's here with us for a little while today to talk about some of the things that they've got going on around the state of Georgia as well as nationally. And just talk to the people.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Nsé Ufot, CEO of the New Georgia Project. We are a nonpartisan civic engagement organization, probably best known for the fact that we've registered over 600,000 young people and people of color in all 159 of Georgia's counties.
Wow. They've been doing work.
Right, we've been out here. But I'm really excited about it because it's never been about just registering people to vote.
Understood.
Right? That we seek to build power for working families and for young people and people of color in Georgia and in the Deep South. Georgia is going to be the first state in the Deep South with a white minority. So by 2024, 2025, white people are going to be the minority in the whole state of Georgia.
So based on that statistic, kind of early on, we can jump into this. With our voter suppression laws and what's happening in the state of Georgia that's been in the national news, let the people know how this is really going to start affecting a lot of elections over the next 3 or 4 years.
Right. Senate Bill 202 is trash. There's not a single redeeming provision in Georgia's anti-voting bills. And so, if we're being honest, the history of American politics, the history of American democracy has been one of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. That we began with the only white male property owners having access to the right to vote. And ever since then, it's been an expansion of the definition of citizen. Who is a citizen who can participate? And so over the past couple of years, Black voters, young voters, and voters in rural Georgia have demonstrated their power, have flexed their power at the polls. And the pale, male, stale, conservative minority that has an outsized grip on Georgia politics, they're shook.
We see this every day in the news. There's always something about the state of Georgia, and telling our audience, you need to pay attention to these issues. You need to pay attention to what's being passed, what's being presented on the floor at state capitol. What's the biggest thing right now that we really should be paying attention to that no one's really talking about?
I think that, honestly, Senate Bill 202. So basically, it allows the elected officials in the state legislature to overturn the results of any election. So City of Atlanta mayor, right? If it's school board, if it's president of the United States, if they don't like the outcome of those elections, then they can overturn the results, A, and then also B, they've created 5 new crimes related to voting. So 2 of them are felonies and 3 of them are misdemeanors.
So immediately talking about that, I know, serving water and food was one of those things, correct?
For sure.
And how much time would somebody get if they're caught doing something like that?
A year.
During November the 2nd.
A year.
Literally?
Yeah, up to a year.
Okay.
Right? It's a problem. It's a problem. But not only that, it's also a crime to receive it. Right? So when we're talking about the indignity that Georgia voters have had to suffer, waiting in line 8, 9, 10 hours to vote. Right? Yeah. Waiting 10 hours in line to vote, you don't have access. You may have personal or professional obligations that need to be addressed. You've been on your phone the whole 8 hours. So we are known for bringing people water and also hiring food trucks and bringing rain ponchos, portable cell phone chargers, all of that.
So you can't do that anymore.
Not only can we not do it, we also you can't receive it. Right? So that means that voters themselves could be subject to criminal penalties because they took a bottle of water from a volunteer, from a nun, right, who was out there trying to bring comfort to voters.
Wow. So
it's a problem. I think the truly evil part of that bill, though, is not only are you criminalizing volunteers and people that are bringing comfort to voters, but the actual voters themselves, right? So even if you receive a bottle of water from a nun or someone that's trying to just do a kindness for people that are voting, you will be subject to criminal penalties, which in Georgia, if you're a felon, you also don't have access to the right to vote. So it is a large-scale, awful, total plan to make it more difficult for Americans to exercise their right to vote.
So I mentioned earlier that we have an election coming up November the 2nd. People are going to be voting for the mayor of Atlanta, city council, president, as well as members on city council and board of education. I know that they've, a lot of the candidates have come through here, a handful of them, and shared with us, what their plans are for safety, crime issues, affordable housing, job opportunities, and things of that nature. Can you kind of let us know if there's something that they're not really talking about that they should really focus more on?
There's a lot. Yeah, I think housing, we're not talking about how Atlanta has rapidly become really unaffordable. We haven't talked about the racial wealth gap and how there are tons of people, college educated people, middle income, high income earners from all parts of the country who are moving to Atlanta and finding success. But if you're born Black and poor in Atlanta, you're like over 90% likely to die Black and poor in Atlanta. And so wealth, class mobility as it relates to Black folks who are from Atlanta is a problem. We are talking about maybe 400,000 families in Metro Atlanta who are facing eviction. And we're talking about 10, 11 cents out of every dollar that the federal government has made available for emergency housing relief that's actually been spent. So between the state government failing us and municipal leaders failing us, run us our coins, right? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Why are you playing with Georgia families, right? It's still going on. And what the people of Atlanta need in this moment is leadership and effective leadership. What we don't need is rhetoric. What we need is someone that understands that, one, there are people who are interested and invested in this narrative about Atlanta, increasing crime in Atlanta, and there isn't data to support that. Right?
That's one.
That there are people that are interested and invested in making an extraordinary amount of money from luxury developments in Atlanta, and
and those are popping up everywhere. Literally everywhere. Anywhere you drive around Atlanta, whether it's in Metro or around the perimeter, they're everywhere, and it's making most people move out of the city.
That part. The minimum wage in Georgia is $5.15. It is below the federal minimum wage of $7.25. That the American people haven't had a raise in 12 years, and the people of Georgia haven't had a raise in even longer than that, right? And so there are a lot of bread and butter, meat and potato issues that don't even get up to, before we even start talking about safety and defunding the police, that there are things that the people of Atlanta need right now that we need our elected leaders to be addressing.
So I'm going to present this question to you. You know that the Buckhead Exploratory Committee has opened up a Central Command Center, right?
Trash.
In regards to their fight for cityhood, what are your thoughts on Buckhead potentially splitting from Atlanta?
It's a terrible idea. I think that, we're gonna set aside the fact that it's someone from New York that has lived here, that hasn't been here for over 5 years. So a Northeasterner who doesn't come from our communities, who doesn't know us, who doesn't love us, who's not invested in the same ways, coming down and stirring up trouble. I know that I sound like I want to call him a carpetbagger, right? I can't believe you're coming down south. But
that term.
Right. But the truth of the matter is this. The narrative that Atlanta is dealing with a crime explosion is just that. It's a narrative that there are people who are interested, who are served by that, number one. Number two, it is basically a neo-segregationist movement, right? Where white folks have decided that there's nowhere to hide. Black people, it's they come in a Buckhead too?
Right.
Right? We must do something about it. And what I need the people of Buckhead to know is that there is no wall high enough that you will be able to build that will shield you from the challenges that come when you remove your tax base and you impoverish the city that's surrounding you.
I know you mentioned earlier more so about how, Caucasians will be in the minority. Like, do you think that kind of stems from that idea that they know that it's coming, and so it's more so, because if we're talking about Buckhead, majority of the people that live in Buckhead do not look like us.
Now, which is interesting because OG Buckhead was a black community. It was settled by formerly enslaved folks, right? And so my thing is that the characteristics that a community takes on are also the result of public policy, right? Also the result of decisions that have been made by elected officials. And so, yes, currently right now, Buckhead is super wealthy and kind of white, and there are more people of color moving, and I imagine that that's part of the anxiety around this neo-segregationist movement. We defeated a similar provision in 2018 in Eagles Landing in Stockbridge, Georgia. Same thing. Eagles Landing is a golf community. It's a subdivision. High net worth families live there, and they wanted to basically build a wall around Eagles Landing and become their own city. And we defeated them because, again, people recognize that, between trash and fire and police and all the services that you need, that they're basically going to tax themselves at an increased rate for possibly the same, if not a lower quality amenities and services, number one. Number two, they're gonna impoverish the city around them, the city of Stockbridge. They're gonna impoverish the school district around them. So what happens when kids at an underfunded school in a city that's crumbling come and knock on your door, right? And so there are real conversations about how we wanna move, how we wanna grow, what smart growth looks like, but it wasn't it for Eagles Landing, and I don't think that that's the case for Buckhead, and I'm hoping that it will be reflected in the results of the election.
And in regards to the state politics, like the landscape of all of that, we're getting ready to do, well, not we, the legislator is getting ready to do redistricting.
I was like, no, what you got going on?
No. But can you gauge the importance of this issue as we head into midterms and get ready for the statewide elections in 2022?
It's one of the most important issues that are ahead of us. They literally are about to draw maps that make it so that they can be in power forever. Because the truth of the matter is that in a marketplace of ideas, fewer and fewer people are buying what the conservative Republicans are selling. And the only way for them to continue to hold on to power is if they cheat. Is if they come through like Snoop and crushing the buildings, right? That's literally the only way that they're going to be able to continue to control Georgia politics, and they're desperate and they're afraid, and gerrymandering, and the poor execution of the 2020 census has hurt Georgians, and if conservative Republicans are allowed to continue in the ways that they have, it's something that we will have to suffer through for the next decade.
So how can New Georgia Project come in to educate our communities about how they need to hold their representatives responsible or to be on site while this is going on? Because we're getting ready to have a special legislative session, correct? Right after the municipal election on November the 2nd. This is going to happen on the 3rd. It's literally vote today, tomorrow we're getting ready to change some things. 100%. So it's what is NGP going to be really doing as far as community organizing?
Right. Well, that's literally what we do, right? So please, so I'm from the South, as are you, right? And so I know that there's a saying in the Black church that we need your time, your talent, or your treasure.
Come on, show up. Show up, church.
And so when I think about what we're doing in this moment and what we're calling on others to do, is to contribute their time, their talent, or their treasure to the cause of civic engagement, robust civic engagement, having every voice heard, having everybody be able to participate in our elections. So what does that mean? That means that if you go to our social media pages,
let them know where to find you.
So please check us out. Don't go to our TikTok though, because they might have somebody on there doing auntie bars that they might not want you people to see. But we are New Georgia Project on all of our platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. And what we seek to do is just to put information out there in a culturally relevant way so that people know and understand what's going on. and they can connect it to their priorities for themselves.
Right.
And
They
for their
make their own
families.
decisions. Yeah.
We are easily gonna knock on 500,000 doors by next Tuesday, in Atlanta, but also not just in Atlanta, but also all across the state of Georgia. So we are talking about the Atlanta mayoral race. This is the Atlanta Voice, obviously,
Right. Yes.
but there's 1,600 elections next Tuesday. Right, in the state of Georgia.
1,600.
Right.
My God.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's voting.
Everybody's voting. Everybody. So that's mayor, that's city council, that's school board. There's still a ton of places in Georgia that are majority black that have never had a black mayor.
Right.
Majority black and brown, never had a Latina serve on school board.
Right.
And so we are playing in about 170 of those 1,600 races all across the state of Georgia, trying to make history, trying to understand how these new anti-voting laws are going to impact people, and just trying to make sure that everyday working people in Georgia have a say in how our laws are being made and how our policies are being made. Like, this ain't an intellectual conversation. This very well could have been on the floor of my dorm room in the late 90s, early 2000s, but that's not what this is. We're talking about the quality of the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, how much money I make so that I can take care of myself and my family, crime. Like, these are real things and real issues that affect real people. And so we do everything that we can to make sure that we're doing popular education in a cool and interesting way.
So recently, Senator John Ossoff called on Congress to pass several pieces of legislation to improve maternal health outcomes and reduce the maternal mortality rate in the state of Georgia and across the country. According to the CDC, Black women in Georgia are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women nationally, according to the data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In what ways do you advocate for Black women's health, including self-care, challenges brought on by healthcare disparities, and cervical health and legislation in the workplace? Now, this is a personal question for me because I'm currently in a documentary with Strayer University and Black Women's Health Initiative where I shared my story. So I really want to know how is it that more Black women can really be heard and be protected in this particular instance?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that question, and thank you for your storytelling and your organizing in that effort. It's so important. I'm gonna tell you this, there are 159 counties in Georgia. There are only 80 counties in Georgia that have an OBGYN. And so, listen, half of the counties in Georgia do not have an OBGYN.
Oh my God.
Right? And so what that means is that people who are pregnant have to travel really far in a lot of instances to get the kind of healthcare that they need, access to the healthcare that they need. And my thing is, if you're poor, and if you live in rural Georgia, you don't need any additional hurdles to getting access to quality health care. And what we have is elected officials, because of their political opposition to Obamacare, have literally left billions of dollars on the table because of their refusal to expand Medicaid. So we got hospitals closing all over rural Georgia. It's a problem. And so we are advocating for an expansion of Medicaid, right? So that there are more doctors can get paid, the hospitals can get paid, and folks can have access to high quality healthcare. And by folks, I mean people who give birth, particularly Black women.
Right.
I think there needs to be a lot that happens in medical education. My understanding is that there's still over half of medical residents who think that Black people don't experience pain the same way that white folks do, right?
Yes.
And so it impacts how people are administered medication.
Right.
It impacts all kinds of treatment plans, et cetera. It's a problem. I think 3, we are advocating for just broader, more robust reproductive choices and reproductive freedom and options. They tried to ban abortion in Georgia at 6 weeks, and the 11th Circuit Court overturned that, but we are getting ready. They say if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. And we're getting ready because it is quite possible that Roe versus Wade could be gone by the end of this year. by the end of 2021.
That's very disturbing, just in general, because I mean, we can go back to where you had mentioned, you know, Caucasians being in the minority. Like, you know, in a lot of instances, the data actually shows that they're using abortion and they're participating. Like, so you would think you'd want, you know, like
I think the problem for me is
there's
that
a disconnect there. Like,
wealthy women are going to always have access to the best in healthcare. And so even when abortions weren't legal in this country, wealthy women, particularly wealthy white women, were getting it as a part of their healthcare regimen. And I think that won't be an option. And here's the thing, it's not just about abortion, it is full on reproductive rights, justice, freedom, bodily autonomy, right? And the idea that there is a healthcare profession who sees us as full human beings, right? And is willing to and will treat us as full human beings that is deserving of care. Listen, when I'm telling you that they were going to let Beyonce Giselle Knowles die in childbirth. And Serena Williams die in childbirth. What chances do working class, ordinary, regular, degular, schmegular Black birthers have, right? This is a problem. This is an issue, and it desperately needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed now. And like I said, Roe versus Wade, almost 50 years of legal precedence protecting women's health, protecting women's rights, is now on the chopping block because they mad. And they mad because we are growing power, that women are voting, women are running for office, women are winning, people of color, that again, the pale, male, stale minority that has enjoyed outsized influence on our laws feel the power slipping away, and so they're coming for all of the rights that we've won collectively.
I'm gonna say 3 words and you tell me what you feel about it. Build back better.
Alliteration is cute. You know, my mom is a poet. My mom's a poet, so I like alliteration, but we got it. It doesn't mean anything to ordinary Americans, and we got to do better about telling people what's in it. Because if I got to sell you on whether or not it's good law, then how good is it? Like, if I got to convince you. So it's reducing what Americans need right now to branding. I don't think that's a strategic move.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate your time. And just let everyone know again where they can find New Georgia Project and any other things that you all have going on to close out.
So you can find me at Nsé Ufot, and SE, last name UFOT, on all of my platforms. New Georgia Project on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. And then always newgeorgiaproject.org. I believe in organization. I believe in organizing. I believe that everyone should have a political home. I believe that Black people deserve the best. And I would love for that to be the New Georgia Project. It doesn't have to be, but if you are interested in learning more about who we are, what we do, and how we get down, newgeorgiaproject.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.